Part 2 of my Hadrian's-Wall path hike consists of days 4 through 8, and day 4 was going to be a rest day for me, so the owner of the hotel at Buckensap Castle took me to Vindolanda, a giant Roman fort from 2,000 years ago that's continually going through excavations, and they're always finding something new. I was able to take an outside tour with a local guide, and he showed us areas like the bathhouses where the Roman soldiers would come from the wall and take a little bit of a rest, and then some shopping areas, some supply runs, and where the living quarters were typically located. A little bit downhill from here would be the museum, where they had a nice cafe, and I got to have some lunch for a long time, and then some visuals like shoes and writing tablets before walking 3 miles to Twice Brewed Inn for dinner, and then going to my hostel at Once Brewed. The next morning, day 5, was my absolute favorite, and I left fairly early, around 7:30, just after a quick breakfast. Took a walk up into the hills, had it completely to myself for about 2 hours, so I was able to take my time and just really enjoy the walk along the cliffs, and just the views were spectacular. The weather was really good, and I just really enjoyed the time up here. Took my time. It was extremely windy, but it was just so pretty and peaceful, and you kind of go up and down a little bit, but you're always along the wall, so it's really interesting. I just really enjoyed the solitude, and I actually felt very good about being here at this point. It felt real, and it felt like the full experience at this point. So then I kind of saw where the Robin Hood tree was, the Sycamore Gap, and of course some crazy people decided to randomly chopped this down a few years ago. I still don't understand that mentality. Who would chop down a tree that's out in the middle of nowhere? Is very well planned, I guess, but not well thought out. But thankfully the tree is starting to sprout again, and it should have a nice future with the saplings elsewhere. I continued on, got to see a lot of different farmlands, and yeah, just great views all around. Got to walk through the woods a little bit, and you got to see the lakes and some swans in the lakes every now and then. It was just really, again, quite pleasant. Past the Housesteads Fort area, and then made my way downhill to this Roman gate called Newburn, which is one of the few gates that was in effect in the empire, except for outside of the fort. So it was quite interesting to see how people would have gone through. It was a nice little dip area. Then you continue on. I can see the top of the peak in the distance a little bit more, and I'm making my way to it. So it was coming. Finally, I made it up with the squishies, the squishmallows. It was very windy, as you can see. But I was just so proud of myself. I met one guy on my way up as he was coming down. And other than that, again, I was just completely to myself. It was amazing. I just absolutely loved it. But it was all downhill from here. It was quite windy still the whole day. It was kind of pushing me along, so there's nowhere to really stop for a break and have a snack or anything like that, so I just kept going. But again, it was just so pretty. Got to still see the wall, some mile castles and everything. It was very pleasant. I made it to Mirtha's Temple, which is kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and didn't really stop because I was tired at this point, so I actually had a coffee at a coffee break stop in a random car park and sat for a few minutes and then got back up. And of course, less and less wall here, but still going, still going. You know, you're kind of along the road for the most of the day, and it was actually starting to get a little bit tiring. So I made it to Chollerford and stayed at the George Inn before the next day had a later start for a shorter day across Chollerford Bridge. Made it up to the Wall area, which is a little village. So a lot of these places have names like Wall or Wall houses because they've taken the materials from the Hadrian's Wall to build their structures in the past. But most of the day was also still going through farmland, though quite close to the road still. St. Oswald Church was pretty interesting, and I would have liked to have gone to see it, except that this is an 1800s church, so it didn't really have a lot of historical significance, just more of the name. But I really enjoyed Heddon-on-the-Wall, which is the area where St. Oswald had a huge victory in the 7th century, so historically I found this area quite interesting. But still, very beautiful countryside, but it did start to rain about midday, and it was off and on all day. I wound up hiding behind stone walls because the wind was blowing west to east, so if you kind of cowered behind the wall a little bit, it was a little bit helpful. I ran out to see a giant cow. I couldn't get through the gate, and I wound up having to climb over some barbed wire fence. Then finally, it was a very peaceful walk to my cabin for the evening. I stayed at a place called Hygge-on-Vallum, and when I got to my room, my bag was already in the cabin. I was at the last little cabin on the edge there. I loved it. It was absolutely peaceful, and I just felt I should have stayed here 2 nights. But I made my way to the Robin Hood Inn for dinner, and the next morning I just kind of sat and enjoyed the hares and the rabbits and the pheasants and the birds with some hot chocolate, and it was just so peaceful. I didn't want to leave, which makes day 7 a little bit more difficult. So I went from having a peaceful morning to having kind of a rough day, and I called it after 6 miles at Heddon-on-the-Wall. And then my last day, I found very easy. It was a little bit more than 8 miles that day, and mostly within little short paths within the woods, above the river or along the river walk. Every now and then I had to go on busy streets in little towns, but for the most part it was super easy. Had a nice late breakfast at an Italian cafe on the way and took my time there. And finally I made it to Newcastle.